So thank you all for being here tonight. I'm really heartened to see so many people, and part of me is wondering, did you come to see the other Norman Sandridge? And that's why you're here. But either way, I'm super grateful for you to come out on a cold Thursday night to hear this talk, and greetings to everyone who may be watching at home down the road. They told me tonight to keep this talk to under 2 hours, so I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to hopefully under 40 minutes, but again, lots to cover. My goals for our conversation tonight, broadly speaking, are to explore the relationship between leadership and what I'm calling a journey of minds, and then to see what ancient Greek literature, particularly ancient Greek epics like the Odyssey and Apollonius's Argonautica, can show us about this relationship and can help us understand about the future of leadership, which is something we're all very much concerned about, I'm sure. I want to begin with a disclaimer and then talk to you about some key terms. First, my credentialed training is as a reader of ancient Greek and Latin literature and as a student of leadership. Nevertheless, I believe that my understanding of literature and leadership is greatly enhanced by various other fields, from anthropology to psychology to sociology. I try to read as much neuroscience as I can and follow in the footsteps of Vasilis. So you'll see me make reference to such fields. And moreover, I think that all these fields are better able to talk to each other when they're presented in the context of art and literature. And so I'm hoping we can have that kind of conversation tonight. Now, secondly, here are some key terms that we'll be focusing on. When I refer to a journey of the mind, I mean something along the lines of understanding the thoughts, the emotions, the intentions, the motivations of other people, and even sort of getting behind, why do they have these thoughts? Why do people have these beliefs? What experiences led to this? This is what we're talking about when we talk about things like perspective taking, emotional recognition, and theory of mind. I'm not, because empathy is one of these words that is thrown around in all sorts of ways, especially in a popular context. I want to be a little bit clear at the outset. I'm not thinking particularly about empathy so much as caring about other people's feelings, or feeling other people's feelings, or showing that you care about other people's feelings, which, by the way, is kind of a new hot topic in leadership studies, particularly in a post-COVID world. Like the boss or the CEO is kind of expected to look around the room and say, I see that you are burned out by all of the work that you're doing. That's an important topic, but that's not what I'm focusing on tonight. As a complement, though, to the idea of a journey to someone's minds, I want us to be thinking about what it would mean to be willing and to be able to give other people access to our own thoughts, emotions, intentions, and motivations, and so forth. And this is a phenomenon that I'm right now referring to as empathizability, but you'll see as the talk goes on, I hope you'll be proud of me, this being about Hellenic heritage. I'm going to coin two new words for us tonight that will both have origins in ancient Greek that I think, again, could be good critical tools for us to think with going forward. But all to say, what I mean by empathizability, if you're familiar with Socrates, as he's presented in Plato and Xenophon, that's the kind of person that I think is sort of a model for this notion of empathizability, someone who's really good at giving an account or a logos of what's going on in their head and how they got to the thoughts that they have, okay? And I believe that both of these abilities, taking a journey to another's mind and helping others take a journey to our mind, are crucial for leadership. Finally, when I talk about leadership, I'm thinking about it as the art of addressing the needs of others and activating their full potential. This is a paraphrase of something that the 4th century Athenian author Xenophon says in his magnum opus on leadership, The Education of Cyrus. If you want, at some point in the Q&A, I'm happy to explain how I see this definition of leadership as being distinct from other definitions we might use. I want to stress here, though, that when I think about leadership, I'm not thinking primarily about people in executive leadership roles, wielding power and holding, managing a lot of resources, things like that. I believe that not only are we all capable of showing leadership, as I've defined it, but that there are opportunities around us all the time to address the needs of others and help them realize their full potential. So when we're thinking about these topics tonight, I want us to be seeing ourselves as agents of leadership and not just thinking about what's the leadership out there, or what is the leadership someone else is showing, someone with a lot of power and a lot of resources, okay? So with these terms now out of the way, I want to take as my starting point for the discussion a quote that I really like from an edited volume on dehumanization. And if you haven't studied dehumanization yet, it's a really fascinating topic, especially in the last 15 or 20 years of psychology. It takes us much beyond broad examples of dehumanization like the institution of slavery or the Holocaust, but gets you more into what we might think of everyday dehumanization that involves any form of denying someone else's full humanity in a prejudicial basis. So I want to begin with this quote where the authors in this book on dehumanization begin to lay out the challenge that we face, I think, in the modern world of taking a journey to someone else's mind. I've given you the key piece of the quote in the slide, but I want to give you the fuller context here. And I'll just say, as a book on collected essays, which are often not that great or not that well organized, I think this is a pretty good example. So in this quote, the authors say that the greatest journey that no amount of technology can ever overcome is one of psychological distance, the distance between two minds. And they go on, as the physical world shrinks, the psychological world expands. Cultures mix and mingle, social classes collide. Political, ideological, or religious views are broadcast through radios, remember those, radios, and television, streamed live over the internet, or exchanged through text and emails. A person commuting into work in a metropolitan area could drive by persons from every income strata, ethnic group, religious affiliation, work classification, or educational background represented in a modern census. The modern world exposes us to a dizzying array of other people whose beliefs, attitudes, emotions, and worldviews may bear little resemblance to our own. And here's the kicker. The greatest voyage in modern life is not to move from one place to another, but to be able to move from one mind to another, okay? This quote has been bouncing around in my head for a long time because I'm continually struck by how, in historical terms, this challenge of taking a journey to another mind feels very recent to me. And let me say what I mean. For one, I don't think for most of our human history, taking a journey to another mind was all that challenging, at least not as challenging as it is now. As one of my favorite recent journalists, Rutger Bregman, likes to say, human beings leak emotions. If all humanity had to do was to work together to survive on a deserted island or survive in any other natural environment, I don't think any of us would need to hear a paper about the importance of taking a journey to another mind. We might not even need to hear a paper about leadership. Think of that. Compared to other primates, we're masters of the mental journey. We are the only species to have whites in our eyes, which gives other people direct access to our thoughts and feelings on a moment-by-moment basis, which is why people sometimes wear sunglasses when they play poker, of course. We're the only species to blush, again, a direct marker as to whether we think we fit into a social situation or not. We communicate so much with our body language and gestures that if any of us ever played bridge with our partners against, say, chimpanzees or any other primates, we would win every time, okay? And we would probably get better with each successive game because we're so good at copying each other. By the way, this is a picture of how an AI image generator would depict humans playing. This is not a real picture. This is human beings playing cards. That's why the hands look like they're from chimpanzees, playing cards with chimpanzees. So say what you will about the internet or social media, but it has been a godsend for enabling us to copy each other as chefs, musicians, gardeners with astonishing skill. A young kid who wanted to become the next Jimi Hendrix could pretty much make a good go of it just by watching YouTube clips of guitar lessons for free in his parents' basement. Again, in modern life, in person and online, in person and online has brought us so much closer together in recent years, whereas in prior generations in many parts of the world, it was possible to stick one's head in the sand and avoid interactions with strangers your whole life. It is now as if 10,000 years of culture, religion, art, language, political ideology, and personal trauma has fallen upon us like an avalanche of thoughts and feelings to be processed more rapidly than our brains were ever adapted to. Couple these modern circumstances with the fact that we're spending less and less time in conversation with one another, and we're cutting forms of education that would best set us up for this journey, namely the humanities. Hopefully you can see why this journey to another mind feels to me like a particular and urgent challenge for our modern world. By the way, if you're interested in knowing about how society is doing as a whole in taking journeys to other people's minds, we can talk about that in the Q&A. There's been some interesting research on that recently. Okay. Another reason that this quote that I alluded to before has been bouncing around in my head so much is that it makes a claim that is warming to me as a humanist, but one I find challenging to prove. And that is the idea that no amount of technology can ever overcome the distance between two minds. Like I said, I like that idea. That's warming to me. But what do you think about this claim? Sci-fi and, what do you think about this claim? Can technology bridge minds? Sci-fi and fantasy storytelling frequently entertain the possibility of a shortcut to another mind by some kind of technology or biological adaptation. Here's an example from James Cameron's Avatar, which many of you are familiar with, where an indigenous people called the Na'vi use these cables in their hair to tame animals and communicate intimately with one another. And another recent sci-fi story that I like a lot is this Afro-futurist tale of a young Himba girl named Binti, who becomes, at one point in her story, outfitted with a special lock of hair that allows her to communicate directly with an alien race of Medusa jellyfish. And she becomes a peacemaker as a result of being able to make this connection with her hair. But what about in our own world? Has technology already helped us to take journeys to other people's minds? Will it do this even more in the future? More and more people, you probably noticed this already, are getting in the habit of using ChatGPT as the first draft of their communications, just to see what it'll say, which raises the question of how much of a mind is even being communicated in such collaborations. And check this out. Check this out if you haven't seen this. This is an image of a demo of the new thing called an AI pen by a company called, believe it or not, Humane, founded by Imran Chaudhry and Bethany Bongiorno, two former designers at Apple. And the way this works is you clip this pin onto your shirt, and it basically works like a smartphone by projecting the screen onto your hand without any other device. And what's relevant for our purposes here is that this device can detect when someone speaks to you in a foreign language. Right? It will then translate that language and allow you to reply back in that foreign language using your own voice, but in a perfect accent. It's the AI equivalent of an ambassador. Now, imagine the implications of this for foreign languages, for teaching foreign languages in high school and college. Right? Now, I know what you're thinking, that interacting with someone through a computer translator is not the same kind of mental journey as speaking in the same language. But it would not be the first time a high school or university sacrificed quality for efficiency. Universities could point out that higher ed is already too expensive. So what if we cut 4 semesters of a foreign language and saved students time and money so that they could either graduate early or take more courses in line with their career goals? I know I have some of my students in the audience right now. How many of you could imagine a university making such an argument? Why do we even need to learn foreign languages when you have a translator right there in your lapel, right? Surely these translating programs will only get better with time. So can technology fully overcome psychological distances? It is here. So if you want to talk about classics or the ancient world, I think that the key is you always have to foreground everything in modern problems, and that's what I've tried to do. But it's here that I want to turn now to ancient Greek literature and consider more deeply what the significance of a journey to another mind means for leadership, and to contemplate the alternative to the idea of technology being a vehicle to other minds. Of all the works we might entertain, the ancient oral epic poem, the Odyssey, seems like the best place to start, because we are told from the very beginning that Odysseus' journey will not be exclusively, or perhaps even importantly, a spatial one, but rather a mental one. Yes, he is the hero of many turns, polutropos, right? And yes, he is the hero of many forms of suffering, but he is also the hero who gets to know the minds of many people, or in the Greek word being there for minds, nooi in the plural, or noos in the singular. Whether or not we're thinking of the minds of actual humans or human-like creatures like gods, cyclopes, and ghosts. Important for us, the Odyssey offers up the practice of journeying to other people's minds as a cultural value. It's celebrated. You're supposed to do this. This is what heroes do. This is what people should do. So much so that we might even call it part of cultural identity. For example, in Book 4 of the Odyssey, Odysseus' son Telemachus goes in search of knowledge about his missing father at the home of Menelaus in Sparta. At this time, Menelaus is one of the most eminent kings in all of Greece. As he prepares to praise Odysseus to his son for executing the plan of the Trojan horse, Menelaus identifies himself as a very Odysseus-like character, saying, "I have learned the design and the noos of many heroes, and I have traversed much land, but I have never seen a noos like Odysseus's." Now, if you will permit me, I hope this is I'm pretty sure this is a friendly audience for this kind of proposal. I would like to coin a new term here, noophile, to describe someone as a lover or a cataloger of other people's minds, based on the examples that we find in the Odyssey. And by the way, I looked this word up. I don't think it's new, right? So you've heard it here first. It's not on the internet. It's a hard to pronounce word, right? Noophile. People are gonna surely read new file or new pile, but it's a word I want to argue for is important for the investigation that we want to have. Okay. Now, at various times and in various stories throughout the Odyssey illustrates the advantage of being a noophile for leadership, which we can discuss further if you like, but I want to enumerate them summarily here. So, what does taking a journey to someone else's mind get you in terms of leadership? First and foremost, it enables you to recognize the needs of other people. So if leadership is all about addressing the needs of others, the first thing you have to do is know what those needs are and recognize them. And taking a journey to other minds enables you to do that. It enables you to build ties of hospitality or xenia. It enables you to increase your personal resources through hospitality gifts. And of course, Odysseus does this both effectively and ineffectively. Sometimes he uses bad judgment about the kinds of people you want to be giving you hospitality gifts. Taking a journey enables you to persuade your followers It enables you to strategize against your enemies because you know how your enemy's mind works and you can anticipate their counter moves. It enables you to judge the character of others for rewards and punishments. So one of the things always to think about in the Odyssey, when we think about the Odyssey as a homecoming, Odysseus is home by book 13. He's home halfway through the story. So what is the rest of the Odyssey about? I think it is very much about this practice of judging, like going from person to person, from mind to mind, and getting the clearest sense of who they are. And then ultimately being a figure of judgment, right? And even beyond this, the last thing I would highlight is the experience of the pleasure of knowing others. This is what Odysseus does in the underworld. He's super curious to know what's going on in other people's heads, okay? Even beyond the idea of journeying to the other minds as a cultural value and as a practice of leadership, the Odyssey also offers up an associated cultural ideal, and that is namely the idea that the journey to another mind could be so successful that two people can come to be in consistent agreement or harmony with one another. Imagine what a state like this could be in our current politically fraught world, being in harmony or being in agreement because you have so effectively journeyed to other minds, okay? The ancient Greek term for this condition is homophrosyne or homophrosyne, or like-mindedness. And the Odyssey even gives clues about how this like-mindedness is achieved and why it's so important. So for example, when Telemachus is at the end of his quest for the whereabouts of his father, he must pass back through the home of Nestor, another of the greatest kings of Greece at the time. And because he doesn't want the old man to extend his stay, he's worried that Nestor will just say, oh, come on in for one more meal, hang out a little bit longer. He doesn't want that to happen. He appeals to Nestor's son, Pisistratus, to make an excuse for why he must get going. And this whole scene marks Telemachus' maturation into a leadership role and sort of solidifies his status as a worthy heir to his father's kingdom in Ithaca. But in making his appeal to Pisistratus, Telemachus commemorates their abiding friendship by focusing on how they have inherited ties of hospitality from their fathers, and that they are the same age, and the fact that their journey, their hodos, has instilled in them this homophrosyne. So to me, it's a very elegant formula, hodos to homophrosyne, right? And this is, to my knowledge, the first seed of a buddy film in ancient literature. You know, the idea that, you know, just two people are going to hop in the car together, go on a quest, and the lesson all along was not the quest, but the friendship that was formed along the way. It reminds me of the John Candy and Steve Martin film, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You know, just put people in a vehicle together, and that will facilitate this journey of the minds, okay? The Odyssey does not exactly detail how the journey or the hodos can inspire homophrosyne. That is left to the audience's imagination. But we may find some clues as to how this might happen by considering what is only the second use of homophrosyne in the entire work. This appears in Book 6 when Odysseus encounters Nausicaa, princess of the Phaeacians, where he must both secure her help in getting home and also foreclose any idea that they're going to wind up as husband and wife together. So he gives her what I call the classic, there's someone out there really special for you, but it's not me speech, right? How many of you have ever gotten that speech or given that speech, right? Oh, thank you for being so honest about that. Yeah, and again, if you're looking for pointers on how to let them down easy, this is a really great example. I really like Emily Wilson's recent translation here, so I'm going to read it out. This is Odysseus speaking to Nausicaa here, letting her down easy, as I say. He says, so may the gods grant all your heart's desires, a home and a husband, somebody with like-mindedness, homophrosyne. And this we could spend the whole talk just on this one passage. I love it so much. I've read it at weddings. Feel free to use it at a wedding someday if you really believe in the couple you're speaking to. He says, nothing could be better than when two live in one house, their minds in harmony. That's homophrosyne again. A husband and wife. Their enemies are jealous, their friends are delighted, and they have great honor. Who would not want that deal, right? The marriage, I believe, we are to have in mind, of course, is the one between Penelope and Odysseus, both of whom share minds that are clever, patient, prudent, and committed to one another. They both plot successfully against their enemies, and their like-mindedness is a delight to friends like Agamemnon, who rejoices when he hears about the success of Odysseus' plot against the suitors in the underworld, and when he hears about Penelope's devotion. The key to their like-mindedness seems to be fairly straightforward to me, and that is Odysseus and Penelope are both noophiles. He with foreigners on his many wanderings, and Penelope with the dozens of suitors she is constantly in conversation with while Odysseus is away. And their mode of becoming a noophile seems to be through constant conversation and storytelling. And that's why I love this scene so much right here. What's being depicted is this is the night that they're reunited after Odysseus has defeated the suitors, and he's proven to Penelope that he is who he says he is. You know, I wasn't the beggar, or the beggar was Odysseus. And they take turns telling each other stories about what have you been up to for the last 20 years. And they were told that Athena prolongs the night to give them the opportunity to exchange. And I just love this depiction here as an example of homophrosyne that we should all aspire to. I always tell my students when I teach this passage in class, like, pair up with someone whose suffering is interesting to you. Like, if you've got that much going for you, that's pretty. If your partner's suffering is boring to you or tiresome, if you're not drawn into the plots and the conflicts, it's not going to go well, probably. So as I say, their mode of becoming a noophile seems to be through constant conversation and storytelling, an exchange of words about their innermost thoughts, feelings, motivations, and intentions. Okay? In talking about this journey of minds, I want to transition now from the Odyssey to the story of Jason and the Argonauts by raising a question. And the question is this: even if we can agree that it's an important part of leadership to be able to take a journey to another mind, how important is it for someone in leadership to make it easy for someone to journey to their mind? There's a prevailing school of thought popularized by Michael Corleone's Godfather character that you have to keep your friends close but your enemies closer. That is, a leader wants to know what's going on inside an enemy's mind but doesn't want others to know what's going on inside their minds. Of course, both Odysseus and Penelope are expert at the art of concealment from their enemies. But it can even be a part of leadership to conceal one's mind from one's own followers. Odysseus regularly does this with the swineherd Eumaeus and the cowherd Philoetius in his revenge plot against the suitors. Even though he's convinced that they are his allies, he is reluctant to reveal, what exactly is going on. The sense seems to be that they would be so emotionally overtaken by the revelation that this is Odysseus that they wouldn't be able to hold it together and help him out. A leader might even feign optimism when they are really pessimistic. This typifies the leadership of Aeneas, the godfather of Rome, if you will. In his introductory speech in the Aeneid, he steps up to calm the hearts of his fellow Trojan exiles as they have just been dashed across the ocean by the errant winds of Aeolus. Rather than communicate to them how sad and devastated he is, Virgil says that Aeneas covered it up. He, Aeneas, spoke such words, and though plagued by monstrous concerns, he affected a look of hope on his face and buried his grief deep in his heart. So is it ever leadership? Is it ever leaderly to just reveal everything that's going on in your head? I think so. So the Argonautica by Apollonius of Rhodes allows us to explore this question. The scene that I want us to focus on occurs shortly after the Argonauts have narrowly escaped through these clashing rocks on their way to retrieve the Golden Fleece. Jason speaks up. There's no reason for his speech. Nobody's asking to hear from him. But Jason, after this happens, Jason speaks up unprompted about how difficult the leadership role is for him. His response to crisis, the crisis that has just been averted and all the ones to come, is one of fear, anxiety, and helplessness, or famously in ancient Greek, amekanie, helplessness. To many readers today, Jason might appear to be in the middle of a panic attack and incapable of any form of leadership. He thus complains to his comrades. Always, day after day, ever since you first gathered together for my sake, I spend the dreary night thinking about every detail. You speak easily, since you are concerned with your own life alone, whereas I am not in the slightest distraught about mine, but fear for this man and that man, equally for you and the other comrades, if I do not bring you safe and sound to the land of Hellas. And I've always loved this passage because I think it reminds us of the burdens of the leadership role, and that when we are being the follower, we are quite often just thinking about ourselves. But imagine whoever is in that role having the responsibility to journey to all of our minds and still strategize everything that has to go on. It really, to me, captures the loneliness, the anxiety, and the pain of a leadership role. But whereas we might expect the Argonauts to be startled and even angry that their chosen leader seems to have lost it in this scene, they are in fact heartened by his confession and give him words of encouragement. What's more, at the next stop on their journey, the Argonauts resolve to aid one another with like-mindedness. So, and the word again is homophrsune. So Jason says, hey, I'm having a really tough time, and they're like, let's focus on homophrsune. That's going to be our mantra. And they, in fact, erect an altar to the goddess of sameness of mind, or homanoia. And it is here that I want to introduce another key term, what I call, you can see that there, the noophant. This is patterned on the word sycophant. If anybody knows the etymology of that word, that's a fun one. Look it up. But here I'm calling the noophant, the one who reveals the mind. One who is adept, as I define it, and committed to revealing their mind in a leadership role. Okay? And I want, so we're coming to the close now, or to the point of Q&A, but I want to offer one final example of the noophant in a contemporary context, in the character of Ted Lasso, an American football coach who unexpectedly becomes coach of a British football / soccer team. Many aspects of leadership and the journey of minds can be illustrated by this show, but one very closely parallels Jason's situation in the Argonautica, and again I think speaks to the modern resonance of the ancient psychology about leadership. In the course of the show, we come to learn that Ted is beset by panic attacks stemming from childhood trauma, and that these have a tendency to come out at crucial moments in a game when Ted is called on to make a decision in his role as coach. In one instance, the attack is so strong that he races off the field and leaves the team in a lurch. Initially, he tries to cover up his panic attack by claiming that he had an upset stomach. But eventually, the team learns the truth from a media report, and Ted must apologize. In doing so, he reveals fully what was going on in his head and takes the opportunity to encourage the players to reveal their own minds to him. As in the case of Jason, this revelation inspires the team to rally around Ted, and they all speak in a spirit of homanoia, or oneness of mind. And again, for me, one thing not to be missed here is that when someone in a leadership role is willing to illustrate and share the complexities of their own mind, they're modeling the thought process for others, right? And so we can look to them as an example and think, oh wow, this could apply to us as well. Okay, all right. we are now at the conclusion of my talk where we can begin to envision the future of leadership vis-a-vis the journey of minds. And let me start with a thought experiment. What if I told you right now that this talk had been written by an AI? I mean, wow. I thought I was so original. Yeah. Well, a year ago, everybody would have thought that was absurd, right? I mean, how would that have been possible? Where would that have come from? Right now, I think, it still probably sounds absurd. 5 years from now, will it be absurd? You think it's totally possible? For sure, 5 years from now, if somebody wants to create this talk, they can even ask the AI to include some jokes about AIs to throw people off the scent, right? Like, make fun of AI while you're writing this speech for me, right? But if I told you this, how would you feel about my leadership this evening? What impact would that have on you? For my part, when I think about the future of leadership, I could envision two extreme scenarios that I'm laying out here for you. And maybe the reality will be a blend of the two. On the one hand, men, I could envision a recommitment to the life of the noophile and the noophant. That is a world where we all seize our capacity and opportunities for leadership by following the examples set forth in the Odyssey and Argonautica. A world where we're trained to study works like these to improve our capacity for journeying to other minds and facilitating journeys to our own minds. Where we spend long hours in conversation and storytelling with others to understand their minds in their full complexity. Where we ourselves spend time in reflection, understanding our own minds, and coming up with ways to reveal our minds clearly to others, again through our own storytelling. In such a world, I see us becoming better at figuring out how to recognize and overcome our most challenging differences and how to find the most wholesome and fulfilling ways to collaborate to address the world's many, many problems. At the same time, I imagine this world may seem like a fantasy to others, either because they don't imagine they have the time to invest in such a complex understanding. In fact, I think that's probably the biggest deal breaker for people, or they don't think it would be all that effective. Or they think it would be too embarrassing or uncomfortable to try this. On the other hand, I could envision a world where we increasingly outsource the journey to other minds, to algorithms and artificial intelligence, similar to how we have outsourced many of our physical journeys to scooters, segways, cars, and buses. In this world, I imagine the noophile and the noophant would become obsolete, that we would rely on algorithms to study our online behavior and purchasing habits and then make predictions as to what we need. No one at Facebook needs to take a journey to our minds. They just need to figure out a way to identify our needs and cravings for content and match us to a provider. The provider themselves would not even need to take a journey to our minds. They just need to fulfill the want or need that Facebook has identified. On an interpersonal level, why would we even spend time giving gifts to one another when Amazon can already recommend to us exactly the gift that they need? Just give them money, right? In this world, I imagine people using AI to craft the perfect message for someone based on all the data known about them. Imagine never having to wonder why a baby is crying, but a machine tells you if the baby is hungry, hurt, or in need of a diaper change. Imagine never having to modulate your voice in the right way or searching endlessly for the right words to communicate with your child. But again, a machine crafts sounds and language in a perfectly soothing tone for you, in line with the most up-to-date lingo. You don't even have to go to Urban Dictionary. Why reveal your own mind when an AI can fashion the perfect one for you? Now, I can't tell you which world we're headed for or which world would be best, necessarily. Again, my expertise is primarily as a reader of literature and a student of leadership. Nevertheless, you can probably guess that my strong personal preference would be for the leadership of noophiles and noophants. And I am thus deeply concerned about the direction we're headed and how little we're doing to stop it. I worry that without being able to become intimate with other minds and holding out the hope of achieving homo fortunae, we may just become sadder and less self-actualized than we already are. What I can tell you is that studying ancient works like the Odyssey and Argonautica and many others can give us a picture of all that may be lost as we advance headlong into the uncharted waters of new and strange social, economic, environmental, and technological changes. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you, and I thank you again for giving me the opportunity to reveal my mind to you. I just want to say that was exactly 40 minutes. What I was told.
So did you use AI?
Huh? Only for the image. Only.
Thank you very much. I had no idea of what I'm going to hear tonight. I'm very surprised and very glad
Thank you.
I came.
Thank you.
I cannot, of course, escape thinking about Donald Trump as a no-file and a no-fun. So I would like your take on it.
Yeah. Oh, you mean where does he fall in the index of
He's
no?
a great leader, having so much hold on so much population in the United States. I would like to see what you think about it.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's a great question. Okay.
You're not a
So,
clinician, remember.
what's that?
Remember, you're not a clinician, so be careful what you're going to say.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I will say I have done a lot of research on psychopathic leadership, and he ticks all, if not most, of the boxes. But this is actually, I think, a serious question to consider, because there is a sense in which Donald Trump has journeyed to at least one kind of mind or a set of minds, and gotten very deeply in. I mean, deeper than many of us ever will. I mean, so there is a connection there. What I will say is I don't think that there is very much effort at all to journey to diverse minds or different perspectives. Something I've noticed a lot in sort of the recent political discourse, going back to debates, public debates that happened since, say, the Obama presidency. When Obama was president, you could ask him a question about, should there be an American presence in Afghanistan? And he could sort of take you through, well, some people might say this, some people might say that, and could actually pretty accurately capture their minds, even if he didn't ultimately agree with whatever the perspective was. As well as I can see now, I'll just use Trump as an example, although I think there are a lot of other examples. There's no effort to do that at all. The effort is to just stay as connected to the one kind of mind that you're trying to attract, and not even pay any, because to pay attention to those other minds would be to admit that the situation is far more complicated than you want it to be. Your goal is to say, no, this is very simple. We all see this very clearly. Am I answering your question? I think it's a really good one.
Okay, if we're going to talk about it, at least from the point of view of human nature, it is very difficult for somebody to be successful in any way, shape, or form, whether we like it or not, or whatever audiences they may have. There's no way to do it without being a little bit of an offhand, a little bit of understanding for your own audience.
Right.
Otherwise, you cannot succeed.
Right. There's got to be.
I mean, just not
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify. When I say a noophile, I really, in the sense, I was using kind of an analogy to a philatelist, a stamp collector.
Yes.
Right. People who collect minds collect a diversity of minds, as I see it, not just like, I only want this one type of stamp or this one baseball card. It's what Plato would have called a philomathés, so someone who is a lover of learning loves the diversity of learning. So if you claim to love music, you don't just love jazz, you love every form of music.
Yeah, but there is psychopathic leadership. It's the history of mankind is filled with psychopaths who are actually successful leaders. These people could do some of this, but not with the way we would like it.
Yeah, well, and I would also argue that they're not, even though they hold leadership roles, they're not necessarily meeting the needs of other people, unless you think people need psychopaths to guide them, which is, one can debate, but I think a lot of people who are in leadership roles who are psychopaths are not actually meeting people's needs. They're only addressing their wants. Sorry, somebody else had a...
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Frederica Dorima, and thank you so much for this tour de force presentation. You went through a lot of kind of notions. And by the way, I also have a mathematics and physics background, although I stuck with physics and mathematics in my
I'm jealous.
PhD. And, so my question would be, one of the questions is, how do you see your training in mathematics kind of shape your thinking in philosophical matters? And of course, I'm Greek, so I do kind of have tremendous interest in philosophy and the ancient Greeks and as it impacts today. So you talked about empathability. I mean, this was the other term that you coined, and then you didn't discuss this. So how this no file and empathability, and also you attribute empathability to Socrates, but Socrates talked more about deductive thinking, which is more mathematical thinking also thinking. So how do you integrate all these? By the way, I was going to ask at the end how this impacts our leaders, including Trump or any other leader that we have. So, so my question is, how do this notion, deductive thinking, empathability, and no-file kind of attitudes in leadership?
Yeah, so let me, thank you. Those are awesome questions. We should have dinner and talk about all of it. On the question of mathematics, either luckily or unluckily, when I was getting my education, I never believed in the distinction between the science and the humanities, and probably that was because I read a lot of ancient authors, and I knew Plato was a mathematician and a philosopher and a great storyteller and a great noophile through the character of Socrates. So when I transitioned from studying physics and mathematics, it was because, to me, the study of languages, particularly ancient languages, grammar, linguistics, etymology, felt as scientific as my sciences did. Like it didn't feel like I was tapping into another piece of my brain or anything like that. So I see myself as a very evidence-based kind of person. I was a philosophy major for a while, but then I got so into etymology, and I remember one time my Latin professor said to me that grammar is a poor man's philosophy. And that has always resonated with me, just the ability to pick apart a sentence, the meanings of the words in the sentence. That's all the philosophy I needed for the most part. I'm trying to think of it. So on the idea of empathizability, so I coined that term to mean someone who was able to be empathized with, someone who was easy to access in terms of their mind and thoughts, and I added in that word noophant, someone who shows you their cards, shows you their mind. And I think, so in the case of Socrates, I think there are a lot of examples of this, but I'm thinking particularly of Socrates in Plato's Phaedo, where this guy's about to die, he's about to be executed, and he says, hey, guess what? I think I've figured out that the soul lives beyond the body. You want to hear it? And he takes them through that. And so there, it's not only a revelation of his thought process, the logos, and he at one point he really wonderfully says, even if we don't understand each other right now, even if we're at cross purposes and you don't understand me and I don't understand your questions, let's not become misologists. Let's not be haters of the Logos. Like let's continue to try to find this Logos. So he's revealing his mind in that sense, but I also just, I think he's very open quite often about his feelings. And he tells them, you know what, I know I'm about to die, but don't let me die believing something that's not true. If it's true that the soul dies, I'll die, and that's fine. And they're really afraid to do that. But I think of him as being very open in that way. And again, from a leadership perspective, I think people who reveal their minds to us teach us a lot. They teach us a lot about how to think and feel, especially if they've had amazing experiences and amazing lives. And at one point, I think it's Fido who says this in the dialogue, when this was all going on and everybody's kind of confused about what Socrates means, he rallied everyone around him the way a good general would, and recommitted people to the fight for that search for the Logos. So again, to me, he's the model Noafont. Did I get your question? Yeah, thanks.
Dr. Myrtle Alexander, thank you so much for a brilliant presentation. You began the presentation and you mentioned the Institute of Slavery and the Holocaust. My question to you is, how would one position the state of mind of young people today when those in poverty their minds are so suppressed that generations of slavery still existed in America? And when you look at what has taken place in recent times with Israel and Hamas, and what's happening in universities where now they've been called to task in places like Harvard, UPenn, and MIT, what state of mind? We're going from one extreme to the other. What state of society's mind and young people would you say do we exist today? Yeah,
well, I would, let me just say, I think it would be presumptuous of me at this point, since there are so many young minds in the audience, it would be presumptuous of me to try to capture those with any kind of specificity or consistency. What I can say, the example that you cite, as I was saying about Holocaust and slavery, what I can say is that the phenomenon of dehumanization is still very much with us. It's still, to me, both a phenomenon we must care about, but also that is very fascinating. And you can kind of look at all the causes for why we tend to dehumanize one another, and the forms that dehumanization takes. Typically, it's two dimensions. It's denying the quality of someone's emotional experience, saying things like, oh, nobody's ever going to be as happy on their wedding day as I am, or that group of people can't experience romantic love, or they can't they can't appreciate beauty. It's doing stuff like that, and also denying people's agency, saying like, oh, that group of people can't plan. Homeless people can't plan. Don't give them a job. I'm pantomiming, by the way. It's not my view. They can't plan. So don't give them a job. They can't carry through on action. So I think it's important for us to continue to understand why we do that to other people. And if anybody, because I love talking about agent examples, if anybody wants a clear illustration of this, read Sophocles' Philoctetes. Read all the ways that this young, or not this young anymore, but this outcast Greek warrior is treated in exactly these dehumanizing ways, because he is physically disabled, because he is a member of an out-group, because he is physically disgusting, because he has been wronged. Often when we wrong people, we tend to dehumanize them after the fact. So all to say, I think there are resources for us in the research and in storytelling to explore this. But again, I don't want to, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. You bet.
Thank you for this interesting take on Iliad and Odyssey. And we know it's very kind of vast well of interpretations, even to this day and on. So once I saw the title of your presentation, I thought about another take on Journey to the Mind. So I'm curious Are you familiar with works of Brian Siburadescu on psychedelics in ancient Greece?
No.
That's pretty interesting interpretation, something that I came across in the works of some other scholars, but it is, I think he's a DC resident.
Okay.
He's based in the area.
Yeah, would you give me the link after we break?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's something that I see as an expansion of this topic.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I read Iliad and Odyssey. But also another thing here is the circle, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming from Bosnia, we call it's Kirka.
Yeah.
That's a totally different pronunciation.
Yeah.
But she's also powerful, one of the most powerful figures in
Mm-hmm.
ancient.
And a great mind reader.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's directing Odysseus. She's basically channeling his whole journey, right? So I see her as as a really powerful figure, and I'm just wondering if she's somebody that you are shedding some light from contemporary perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I haven't given as much thought to Circe, but something that you might find interesting. I often think of Helen as a counterpoint to Odysseus. Like if you think about it, they both spend time in a foreign land. They both have to adapt to foreign circumstances. And Helen, just like Odysseus, is polutropos. She has many turns to her, and we learn this in a funny way. That passage that I alluded to before, where Menelaus says, I've visited a bunch of mines. He's speaking at a point in the Odyssey when Helen he's about to tell a story about how Helen is polutropos in a bad way. And the story is that when all the Greeks were hiding out in the Trojan horse, Helen walked around the outside and imitated the voices of all of their wives. So she's being, polutropos there. She's a mind reader too, and can even, give back the mind that she has studied. Yeah. Again, not so much with Circe, but I think Helen, and of course she has her own issues of homophrosyne with Menelaus. Like they're kind of a failed experiment in homophrosyne after a reunion. Yeah.
So I wonder if you can help me clarify something. I'm listening the whole talk and the answers, and I'm trying to understand, are you trying to explain how an effective leader works or is effective, or it is a strategy to become a great leader? And the next related question to that is, how about the minds of the people that the leader is trying to lead? Are they supposed to stay there waiting for the leader to discover them, or they have to discover the leader?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely it's the latter one. And if you remember, just to use the gods as an example, it's the boule, the will or the plan of the gods that everybody is constantly, especially in the Iliad, but also in the Odyssey, everybody's going around and trying to figure out. Tell me again, what was the first part of your question?
Well, the question is this a quality
yeah.
that somebody has, or something that if you want to be successful?
Yeah. This is really, I think this is a good place to talk about why I was defining leadership the way I was. And again, I'm channeling Xenophon, who I think has a million great things to say about leadership. And this book, The Education of Cyrus, was cited by Peter Drucker, one of the most highly renowned management theorists of the 20th century, as the greatest work on leadership management. But you used the word successful and effective. I don't use those terms to describe leadership. Nor do I use terms like influential, right? Because you can go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire, and you are influential. But that, if somebody wants to think of that as leadership or study that as leadership, I'm not going to fight them for it. But I am interested in the people who actually address the needs of others and activate their potential. Okay, so there may be other definitions of effectiveness, like, oh, we won the battle. Well, did winning the battle actually address anyone's needs? Did it make them better people, or did it just make you richer? Did it just feed into your bigoted views of other people? Like, that's why I think the humanities is such a central piece to this question, because it's the humanities that helps us understand what human needs actually are, and also to understand the complexity that you're never just pursuing one human need. There's like 50 human needs that can be played off one another and balanced. So when I talk about the journey to minds, I think that is a capacity. It may or may not lead to effectiveness, right? Lots of people have had effects or have done things by not caring about the minds of the people that they work with, or only caring about them in this kind of narrow Trumpian sense about, like, how can I, titillate the mind, or how can I make the mind angry, or things like that. What I'm really talking about is someone who makes the effort to truly understand what other people's needs are, and be in dialogue with them about what those needs are, because you don't know from the baby right away what the need exactly is. You've got to sit there and pay attention and listen, and eventually the child learns to speak and can advocate for their own needs, and then your job is easier. Does that help, or does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Professor. You had an interesting presentation. So I'm a finance professional interested in philosophy and neuroscience, and the quote you had from the book Humanism and Dehumanization, where you said that no amount of technology can overcome the distance between two minds. I think I read an article 2 years ago where they had wired two brains together, and somebody was able to understand the other person's perspective. So can you say that technology has already overcome that?
Well, I'm not familiar with that study at all. I would love a link. I don't really know what that would look like, or what that would mean.
Sure.
That's very. But again, I mean, like I said, that's the hope that sci-fi and fantasy sometimes offers, that there could be a shortcut to conversation and storytelling and interpersonal interaction by connecting some kind of magic wire to someone else's brain, right?
And the last question I have, so from leadership perspective, what would you say is a better way, in addition to the Socratic method of getting into understanding through questioning, is there another method from a leadership perspective of how to understand best the minds of interests of other people?
Can you rephrase your question? I don't think I understand you exactly.
So from a leadership perspective,
Yeah.
What's the best way to understand people? Like the Socratic method is one method, right? So questioning, trying to understand.
Yeah.
What other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm on my feet. I'm not actually ready to rank the best ways to get to other minds. But I would say, for me, the lesson in the Odyssey is actually sitting down with people, or taking a physical journey with people where you are regularly in conversation. I'm also a fan of camping trips, right? Just laying out in the stars and waiting till you're both bored or tired and starting to really reveal yourself. But I should stress or emphasize that I do think it's a two-way street. I don't think there's just someone who's really good at reading minds or journeying to minds. The other person has to be willing to open their mind up. And in a good conversation, you kind of take turns. It's almost like a trust building exercise where you open your mind up, they open theirs up a little bit, and as the trust increases, the flow gets really good.
So, Norman, let me try a comment, and I'd like you to counter-comment. So, in my view, in Odyssey, although we're talking about non-egno, this non-egno is not as much cognitive as it is experiential. Go on a camping trip, you said. And at least in the way the clinical end of things understands empathy is really go there and live someone's life if you can. Go spend a weekend with them. Go have some wine with them. unless you do that, it's not something you can conceive of cognitively or as a thought, as a thought experiment. And this is exactly the experiences also of Greeks of the time that these epics were written, that they were going around the Mediterranean and spending time there and actually acclimating and exchanging and so on. And it is this experiential aspect of it that I see no way that AI can imitate. The most AI can do, in fact, cognitive starts from computers, and may actually, we may get it back from computers, but not the camping trip experience you mentioned, and not what I believe Odysseus had in mind, or actually Homer, or whatever Homer presents had in mind, or what the Greeks were doing at that time around the world in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, I think I totally agree, and one of the things that I often challenge people who are promoting like online education or AI, I say, you know, give me the AI version of a coach giving a pep talk before the big game. Like, do you want the coach to say, hey, I asked the AI what you need to hear right now, you know, in order to get really pumped up? Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to parent using AI, I don't think, yet, and that comes to your point. I will say, there is a piece of technology, however, that does something along the lines of the camping trip, and that, of course, is the book. And again, this is known neuroscientifically. There's a great book. It's Marianne Wolf, I think, has the book Reader Come Home. She's both a neuroscientist and a literary critic, and you can demonstrate that in good immersive literature that has lyric beauty to it, that recreates that journey. Yes, that activates the imagination. Yes, you are approximating that, and of course we need that because there are 8 billion people on the planet, and there are many minds we will never have a chance to take a journey to, and we need books. We need that technology at least to get us there.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, who is that back there? Young student.
Yes, so at the end of your lecture, you discussed kind of like the two various paths that we have. We can focus on AI and the potential for that, or we can look at Noah files and Noah fonts. And I'm just curious, I feel like AI is probably not going anywhere, and even though I still gotta get up to speed on it all, do you think there's a future that combines that with having more person-to-person contact and actually people really understanding each other's minds and really investing in each other's minds with AI as still a very present force? Because I don't think it's going anywhere, but do you see a kind of combination of that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, a great question, and I'm glad that you have many more years ahead of you than I do to continue to grapple with, because I do think this is a multi-generational, multi-decades kind of wrestling with this, and this is the challenge of technology growing so exponentially fast, is that every time there is something new, none of us has time to say what's being lost now that we're adopting this. And again, I want to come back to the importance of reading ancient works to remind us of what we might be missing out on. And I think if we just jump on the AI bandwagon, we're going to miss so much. And I say this to young people in particular because you may not have been immersed in these works as I have and many in the room have for the last 30 years or more. To answer your question directly, as of right now, I don't see kind of what a happy marriage, a homo fortunae between AI and the human brain would look like. I'm very wary of it. I'm very skeptical of it. I mean, one of the things that's been pointed out before, and this was something that people critiqued Wikipedia about early on, even though I think it's gotten better, is that it can come so close to seeming. I mean, there are people who actually believe AI is our minds, and they've kind of like fallen in love with them or formed friendships with them. It can seem so much like 99% of this sounds perfectly true, so I'll just trust that other 1% is right. And again, as I said, people worried about this with Wikipedia. And so that's a particular concern that I have. And again, there's actually, I can give you some bibliography on this. A communications person at GW here in DC has actually likened that phenomenon to what Plato talks about with rhetoricians in the ancient world, that they are able to say things that seem true. And we need to be wary of that the difference between that appearance and the reality. To 99% of the population, what an AI says might sound like the truest thing in the world.
Sophistry.
Yes, it's sophistry. It's a kind of sophistry. Yeah, good word.
Okay, 2 more questions, one here and then your next.
Can we hear from, he's had his hand up like 5 times. Can we, please?
Thank you. So I really like your concept of a neurophile, and I guess, would you consider what we have now, for example, a Facebook algorithm or a TikTok algorithm, to fall under your definition of neurophile, purely as a cataloger of human minds?
Yeah, except it's not a mind. That's the trick there. You can have, AIs can exhibit mind-like behavior, but it's not a mind. And one of the things I challenge my students in my political theory class to think about is whether or not an AI could be a political theorist. Because etymologically, theory means an envisioning. It means coming up with a picture or an idea. But if there's no mind there, even though what's coming out looks like political theory, it's not theorization.
Yep. Yeah. If you had to grade kind of the current performance or aptitude of a Facebook algorithm as kind of a neurophile, how would you rate it compared to, say, for example, Odysseus?
A what? Oh, Odysseus?
In its ability, the ability.
Yeah. Can it capture someone's feelings? Does a Facebook algorithm know how we feel? Probably, right? It knows, are we in a caring mood, happy, sad? Can it gauge our intentions? There's research out there that has demonstrated, an algorithm can predict what your partner's next purchase of shoes is going to be better than you can. Someone who knows you really well. So on that level, yes. But I think the challenge for us is to think about, well, what are the things it couldn't know about me? I don't feel that well. No, I feel like I am more complicated than Facebook will ever know. I pay attention to these things and ask, like, why did Facebook send me this product? And sometimes you will see friends on Facebook say, I feel so seen right now. Yeah. Like it's, Facebook sees me because it told me to get this, hand knitted Grogu doll or something, and I've been wanting that my whole life. So sometimes that happens, but again, I want to believe that we are more sophisticated and more complicated, at least right now, than that mind could anticipate. And think about. I'm still thinking about your question with Odysseus. Think about the kind of mind reading that Odysseus needs to show when he comes up with the scheme to get out of the Cyclops cave, right? He's got to know, I need the Cyclops to open the entrance to the cave because I'm not strong enough to do it, and I also need to trick him enough so that he won't rat me out to his other comrades. So I'm going to make up this name, Utis, nobody, to trick him. Maybe Facebook can do that. That would be the challenge for me, to think about that depth of understanding, or sharing a secret like what he shares with Penelope.
The play aspect of
yeah,
play.
yeah.
The uncertainty of play.
Yeah. Great question though, and my wheels are spinning now.
And our last question?
Yeah, and it's along the same lines, first of all, as a scientist, and the AI's algorithm doesn't know anything about the system it models. It doesn't know whether it's a chair or it's the leaves on a tree.
Yeah.
It's very, and I've given to my fellow scientists challenge questions, like for example, can AI derive the law of gravitation or the relativity or the photoelectric effect? And one can actually question from in the literature whether AI could write an Odyssey, the Odyssey, based, not on fitting already in the patterns that I was, reading the Odyssey and then reproducing it, but based on the knowledge of words, because poets create new words, right? So, of course, AI, one can envision it could, because if you have the rules of grammar, you can envision AI doing it. But as you pointed out, the human has, an intuition and things like that, that, it's hard for AI, because exactly it doesn't know the system, really, the makeup. So, what's your thought? Maybe that should be a challenge.
Yeah. No, I think it will continue to be. Okay. Thank you.
So there you go.